Entrepreneurism can be a lonely journey. It's just baked in. Like, there's a certain amount of entrepreneurism where you're just doing things that shouldn't be done, right? I mean, just the very fact of starting a business, the odds are it's not gonna work. If you're starting a business, you're going against somebody's advice, right? It kind of comes with the territory. One of the scariest forces of nature, right, is a founder with a vision.
Folks, welcome to the Relentless Pursuit of Winning podcast. My name is Rick Meekins. I'm the managing partner at Epiphany Business Consulting and your host for today. In the studio, we have Scott Ritzheimer. How are you, sir?
I am quite well. Excited to be here.
Oh, glad to have you. Thank you again for agreeing to be on the show. Looking forward to getting into doing what you to your story, what you've done, and what you do for the world. So let's give our audience a little bit of a background. Tell us about who you are and a little bit about your journey.
Yeah. So anyone, I don't know if anyone's watching on video, I got to apologize. I know I look like I'm about 22 and what I'm going to say seems absolutely outrageous, but in my career, I've had the opportunity to help start and scale about 20,000 different organizations. I've partnered up with a lot of visionaries, doing a lot of really cool things, businesses, nonprofits, churches, hospitals, the whole gamut. And when you see something happen that many times, you can't help but start to spot some patterns, right? But that's one thing compared to when you recognize, oh, I'm in that same pattern myself, right? It's easy to see others' founders' stories. It's another one to have yours all together. And so, being a founder in my early 20s, the first leadership team meeting I was in, I was leading. I had no idea what I was doing. It was awful, by the way. It was just terrible. To all my leaders, if any of you are listening, I'm so sorry. It was awkward. It was just terrible, and for founders, a lot of us, we kind of have that kind of journey. Now, you may do it earlier in your career, later in your career, but there's so many firsts, right? There's so many times when you step into something, the very first time you're doing it, you're expected to lead it. And what that did for me, outside of it gave me a little ego thing, it was kind of cool. Like, I'm the guy, that was there. It didn't help me very well, but it was there. What it did, the dark side of that was, if it didn't work, who else could I go to fix it? Right? Like, when I had that terrible first leadership team meeting, what am I going to do? And I started to kind of buy this lie that I had to figure it out, right? Like, if I couldn't figure it out, then it wasn't going to happen, or nobody could. It sounds so arrogant when you say it out loud, doesn't it? But it was just this, and even more so, it's just isolating, right? You hear this, it's lonely to be at the top. Entrepreneurism can be a lonely journey. And part of what makes that happen is it's just baked in. Like, there's a certain amount of entrepreneurism where you're just doing things that shouldn't be done, right? I mean, just the very fact of starting a business, the odds are it's not going to work, right? So there's a little bit of if you're starting a business, you're going against somebody's advice, right? It kind of comes with the territory. The other part of it is many entrepreneurs are making something from nothing, right? When you're creating something from nothing, there's a risk that's inherent with that. But if we misconstrue that risk to be that we're the only ones who have ever done it, or we're the only ones who can ever figure it out, that's fine until it's not fine. And what happened for me is we hit a couple of just real significant hurdles as a business. Our profitability started to fall. I started having trouble with our managers, right, who were my friends. So you kind of hire people who breathe, and then you keep the ones that do some good work, and you make them managers, and you just you create relationships with these people through those early days. And now it's kind of like, do I have to fire my best friend? Like, is that real? Is this how this works? And there are just these really hard times and hard seasons. Should we cut off $1 million business line in our business? And when you've gone it alone for so long, you start to buy the lie that if you can't figure out, no one else can. And what it does is it feels so it just feels like you're completely out alone. I remember talking with a friend. I was like, I feel like every day I just walk off the face of the map. I have no idea what's out there. And I've been blindsided enough now, again, relatively early in my career, but I've been blindsided enough now that I don't really want to take that next step. I don't exactly want to know what's coming up next. And so I started to get worried about the future. I started to wonder, hey, is this as far as I can take my business? Is this as far as it can go? And so what I did, I went out and really for the first time, we started to bring in some coaches and consultants, folks to help us. It was like, if we can't figure it out, maybe they can. They're smart at this kind of a thing. And one of the things I realize now, I didn't know then, is that you can hire the wrong coaches and consultants. And it's a skill to picking the right guide, actually. There's a skill that comes, just like hiring the right people inside your business. There's a skill for that. We didn't have it. And so we successfully had 3 terrible experiences with coaches and consultants in a row. I lost more money during that period of time following the well-meaning advice. These are not mean people. The well-meaning but wrong advice of 3 different consultants, 2 consultants and a coach. And what do you think that did for my feeling of isolation, right? It just affirmed every wrong belief I had about the loneliness of my position. And Rick, I felt so stuck. And it sounds funny, as I was 20, I was just in my 30s at this point, and I'm leading a multi-million-dollar business. It's like, oh, boo-hoo. It's like, you've got it all right, man. But it's a real thing. And I work with founders now, and one of the things that makes it so hard is, like, it does look good from the outside. And you almost get on yourself, like, why am I complaining, right? Well, like, it's not that bad. It's not that hard, but it is that hard. Yes, you should be grateful. I don't want to gloss over that, but there's real challenges in that. And we just kind of sat there. I was there for probably 2 or 3 years. And I was listening to a podcast, and this guy with a funny Irish accent comes on, and he starts talking about life cycle stages for businesses. I can say that because he's a dear friend and colleague of mine now. But he starts talking about this, super fascinating, right? Life cycle stages, one of the most boring things in the world. But as he's going through these different stages, he gets to the 3rd stage called whitewater. And it's like he's got a camera in our office somewhere. How could this guy know this about my org, right? Like, and it just shattered the lie that I was the only one doing this. Or it just absolutely, it was the very first moment as an entrepreneur that I actually felt like I was on a map, that someone actually understood where I was. And that's when, I didn't know it at the time, but that's when I got the glimpse of what great coaching and consulting can do, right? It shatters the lie that we're alone. It names where we are in our circumstance. It gives us clarity about what the problem is, and it gives us the clarity on how to overcome it. Long, embarrassing story short, maybe we can come back to it later, but long, embarrassing story short, I get a copy of his book. I take my leadership team through the book, and it was hard. Like, following this stuff, it was not easy. It was hard, like real work stuff. But the confidence I had that it was going to work was so strong that it carried us through, right? We tripled our bottom line in a single year. It grew by 5 percentage points again the year after that, and then again after that. We increased our top line during that time by several $1 million. It was just this radical transformation. And I finally realized, like, oh, like, that's what this coaching consulting thing's supposed to be, right? That's what it's supposed to do. So that was kind of my run. We got the company into a really successful spot. I, through either boredom or insight, realized that I wasn't the guy to take it to the next level at that point. And so I transitioned to another leadership team. And now I get to spend my days helping other people to recognize that they're on a map, to give them that path to predictable success. And man, it is such a joy to do it.
That's fantastic, man. That's fantastic. Wow. There's so many, there are so many questions that I have, it's just like, what are those 3 things that you did, blah, blah, blah. But dude, seriously, I mean, in your early 20s, what prepared you, to get up and say, hey, you know what, I want to build a multi-million-dollar business,
Absolutely nothing. Absolutely. I was a total accidental entrepreneur. So, okay. Folks you look at my LinkedIn profile, you'll see I was real active in ministry right out of school. Actually, I'd gone to a ministry school. I moved to Atlanta with my wife. We had just gotten married. I was 20 years old. We moved there, and we were part of a ministry, and that ministry didn't pay, right? It was a volunteer, like full-time volunteer role, basically. And we had to put money, we had to get money to put food on the table. So we both got part-time jobs. And I got a job with this guy, and I was literally answering in emails coming in, and the mail coming into the mailbox. I'd run to the post office. That was my job. And it was just something to pay the bills. And about 2 months after I started, he sold the business. He owner financed a deal to sell the business to another small business out of Nashville, Tennessee. And I watched over the next, what was it, probably 15, 16 months, maybe a year and a half. I watched the new ownership group systematically but unintentionally destroy the company and almost destroy theirs in the process. I learned, you asked what my preparation was. It was from watching the company that I had grown to love just completely fall to pieces. And there was no bad guy in the story, right? It wasn't like this vulture capitalism thing. Like, it wasn't that the previous owner was doing, no one was trying to make it not work. Everyone had a vested interest in it working, and it didn't work. And I learned more in that, again, 15, 16, 18 months than I did when I actually went back to business school later. And that was the preparation ground. That was it. And so what happened, kind of fast forward, we're in September 2008. Of all times, and early September 2008, and the company from Nashville gives the original owner a call and says, "Hey, we've given it our best shot. It's not going to work. We're going to declare bankruptcy. If you want the company back, you can have it." Now, that was basically at this time, because there were just 2.5 part-time employees, and I was the half. So there wasn't a whole lot left. It was kind of like 3 broken computers and a worn out office chair where like all the padding was gone from the middle. Like, that's what was left of this once really cool company. And for either a lack of other opportunity or just a vision to see the thing work, the previous owner said, "I'll take it." I drove up to Nashville, picked up those 3 computers and the broken office chair, which we kept for years, by the way. And he called me on the way up to Nashville, and he said, "Hey, I'm getting it back. Will you help me launch this thing again?" And so I helped him co-found the company as we were relaunching it and building it. And by that time, I had just fallen in love with business, right? I watched this really, really painful process happen. I watched a lot of people really get hurt in intangible ways. And I fell in love with what the business could be. I fell in love with what business could be. And that was really the entry point for my journey as an entrepreneur.
That's amazing. That's amazing. That's awesome. That's awesome. That's a great, I mean, it's terrible. And, really part of the journey in reality. I mean, it's terrible, going through that, witnessing that, but, I would have to concur. I mean, I think that my most valuable lessons, have been through the challenges, through having to go through those hard things and just kind of muscle through them. Are there like specific things that you remember that were just like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can make it to tomorrow, like during your journey, and then just like you were just somehow able to muscle through?
There were relational things. I don't want to share some stories just for the sake of other people that were involved, but most of them were relational, right?
Yeah.
And the hardest place, and I would say that business relationships are second only to marriages, right? In terms of the reward for getting them right and the challenge of getting them right, and so whether it be business partnerships like me and the other owner, or whether it even just be relationships with the other leaders, those are real relationships. Like, those folks matter to you. And when that world of relationships starts to intersect with and rub up against, we're a business, we're here to accomplish something together. Those are some of the hardest times. And what I've found is that while the relationships were rarely the cause of the problem, they were usually the thing that signaled something else was going wrong. Right? Either, our stage as an organization had changed. My stage as an individual had changed. There are 7 distinct stages that founders go through, and who we have around us and how we relate to them and who we need supporting us changes at each of those stages. And when you don't know what those stages are and those stages change, and you keep asking the people from the previous stage to come with you, whether they want to or not, right? That's tough. That's tough stuff. And so most of it was around that. Most of it, the really, really hard, like fetal position on the stairs crying times had to do with, just the wonderful relationships I had with folks that we were working with, and just the when those push came to shove.
Yeah. I can relate to that. Did you develop, or do you have like a methodology, for just looking at a problem for what it is and defining. I'm sitting here studying a methodology, right? Do you have a process that you use for looking at a problem and deciding how to address it?
I do. I think processes are super, super important, right? Systems are super important. And the thing that was the saving grace for us, the transformational power in what we were doing through Les McCune is the gentleman's name, that came from his podcast and his book, was recognizing that businesses go through different stages over time, right? That they, for instance, right out of the gate, early struggle. Startup mode, it's just an existential fight for survival. Well, after startup mode, if you get it right, you move into the black, you start making some money, you move into very technical stage called fun, right? And fun's fun because it's not early struggle anymore. And fun, you can grow, and it's a breathless sprint across the finish line, but we win, right? And you're growing, you're adding people, you're adding stuff, and what's happening is the complexity starts to build up a whole lot. And so just real quickly, you end up in this stage called whitewater. And whitewater is like early struggle in that it is really, really hard again. But whitewater is unlike early struggle in that it doesn't really make sense, right? If you haven't been through it before, like the first time entrepreneur for me, if you don't have folks around you who've been through it, then something like whitewater, where it was working well, why did the game change, right? Like, what happened here? Why are the same things that were working so well for years seem like they're causing all these problems now? And so, the next step is predictable success, and then there's others on the decline side of that. But the big aha moment was, it's not so much about what you do. It's about making sure that what you do is right for when you do it. And when you look at both the predictable success framework that I use, it's in these books back behind me, and even the framework that I put together is called the Founder's Evolution. It's really centered in a core around this idea of when. Because what you should be doing as an organization, what you should be doing as a founder, that changes dramatically over time. But for both entrepreneurial organizations and for founders, there's nothing that really demarcates those transitions for us, right? If you were an employee somewhere, let's say you're rising through the ranks, right? First stage, you're frontline worker. Next stage was it your project lead or something like that. You get a new title that comes with the new game. You get a new title that comes with the new challenge and the new set of skills you need. But for instance, for a founder, what's the title on their business card from day one or even before day one? It's founder and CEO, right? Or something along those lines. Well, I'll be honest with you, you don't actually act like a CEO until stage 5. That means that there are 4 distinct transitions that happen between 0 and 5, or between 1 and 5. And unlike most other places in our life, there's nothing to say that transition has actually happened. They're invisible.
Interesting. Okay. So tell me about those. Tell me about the stages. I mean, it sounds like it makes sense.
Yeah. So it's a mouthful to go through 7 stages all in a podcast. So we're not going to fire hose everybody, but
don't deep.
I'll dive in a couple of these key areas,
Uh-huh.
right? And so one of the places where founders really get themselves in trouble, especially really smart ones, right, or really talented founders, is a move from stage 2, which I call the startup entrepreneur, to stage 3, which unfortunately is called the reluctant manager. And basically what happens is in stage 2, startup entrepreneur, it's like being a star player. It's about how good you can sell, how good you consult, how good you can cut hair, right? How good your coffee is. It's basically about how effective you are. And to win in that stage, you become more effective as you. Well, you know this. When you start bringing in some employees around you, you got a handful of people helping you. It's less and less about how good you are and how good you are at making other people good.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's not a founder in the world. Tell me if you ever meet one. I want to meet them. But there's not a founder in the world who starts their company so that they can manage other people. Right?
Well said.
There's not one out there. And so what happens is we kind of wake up one morning and we know we've got 5 people counting on us so that they can put food on the table for their family. And we think, well, what is wrong with these people? Because they don't think like us. They don't take ownership like us. They don't act like us, right? In fact, we actually don't really want them to act like us, but we kind of think we do. But the thing of it, we just don't get them. We don't understand them. And it's frustrating. Why? Just solve the problem, right? Or just write. Why does your email have punctuation problems in it? Or whatever it may be. We get all these little things, and we get picky, and we're annoyed. And what makes that annoyance so much harder is that we're having to sell 5 times as much to cover all that payroll, right? And so what makes that reluctant manager so hard is a couple things. One, the more talented you are as that star player, the harder it is to make the transition to captain on the field. I call it the star player paradox, right? And again, you've seen this. The more talented you are as a sales rep doesn't make you a great sales manager. And you'll see the same thing for founders. The more talented you are as a consultant, the harder it is to make the leap to having other people consulting with you. And pick your industry. It's the same thing that happens in all of them. And so this kind of reluctance comes up. We find out that other people need to be managed. We kind of hate being managed. And so I don't want to do it. And it's a frustrating time for folks. But you don't get to farm that out, right? As an entrepreneur, as founder, as CEO, as whatever title you want to use, yes, you can bring in someone to help you manage. This is a great thing, but you've got to develop the just few skills that are needed to manage the right people, right? And because if you don't, how are you ever going to hold your manager accountable? If you don't, what happens if that manager leaps and you've got to manage your folks for a little while, right? If you don't, how are you going to manage the next thing that you're leading and taking over? So we've got to get past that reluctance, right? We've just got to recognize, hey, if I want to get where I'm going, I need other people around, and I need other people who don't think like me. And if I can learn to just, again, those few skills that they need to manage those people well, that's what's going to ignite growth. It's not about me running faster anymore, right? At least not all the time. One other thing that kind of makes this difficult, and folks will be like, yeah, that's great. Like, I'd love to have the time to coach my employees, right? Scott, where am I going to get time to do that? Because that's the big challenge of this stage is you have to coach and direct and do in real time. You are on the field. Someone's trying to take your head off, and you're trying to direct traffic. And it's just coming at you like this, right? So that stage for founders, I mean, almost every single founder struggles in this stage to some extent because they're just not naturally wired as managers. They didn't get into this to be managers, and they feel like it's an unnecessary evil. But the faster you can learn to embrace it, the faster you can see the benefits of, again, not becoming the best manager in the world, but developing those basic management skills. That's going to unlock growth and accelerate you to the next stage.
Cool. Awesome. And there's 6 more stages where that one.
There's 6 more. So if we got about 6 hours, we can go through all of them. I want to dive into one more though. That is every bit as challenging as that next one. Not to say that the founder's journey is all bad. That's not true. In fact, it is just full of joy in every stage. There's something really special about every stage, but it's also hard, right? And what happens, folks always say, we want to get to the next level. How many times have you heard that as a coach or a consultant, right? Someone says, I want to get to the next level. And when you ask them about it, you dive into that a little bit. What they really mean by the next level is just a lot more of this level, right? They kind of see the next level as just a higher degree of doing what they do right now, but that's not the truth at all. The next level, if you're that captain on the field, if you're that reluctant manager, the next level is coach on the sideline, right? You get sidelined. That's what the upgrade is. And don't get me wrong, there are wonderful things about that, right? No one's trying to take your head off anymore. But for founders who by virtue of their DNA and what they had to do for their business to succeed, they had to be a star player. They had to be great with the ball in their hands. It's really hard to stand on the sideline, especially if it's not going well. Right? So a story I like to tell, and I actually open the book with a little anecdote. And so it's football season. It's actually playoff season as we're recording this, at least. So it's fun to share this. Let's imagine it's a big game, and there's 4 seconds left. We're down by 4. We got the ball on the 4-yard line. Lots of 4s here, and you got to get the ball in the end zone to win. Field goal's not going to do it, so you've got to make the touchdown. It's all down to this last play. And you've got the perfect play for it. So it's a fake to the running back and then a quick toss over the shoulder on a time play for the wide receiver in the corner of the end zone. You've run it 1,000 times and you know it's going to work. And so you call the play, and for the first time, though, instead of being on the field ready to make it happen, you've got to stand on the sideline and watch it go. And this moment hits you of like, did I really prepare them well? Right? Did I really call the right play? And you realize that it is 100% out of your hands. So what happens? Center hikes the ball, quarterback gets it, fakes to the running back, and it actually works. Everyone collapses on the hole, and it's just like, we've got it. And you kind of pan left, and you look at your star wide receiver, and horror of horrors, he got the play wrong. He's blocking for the run. And so no one knows how this is possible, but you book it, right? And like the headset flies off, the clipboard goes flying, you're pushing assistant coaches out of the way, right? Running through the referee, whatever it takes, you take off down the sideline. And they're going to study the physics on this for years because there's no way you possibly could have made it there in time. But somehow you get to the end zone, you make the dive, you make the catch, you get 2 feet in bounds. And what do you expect? The crowd to go wild, you know? What do you get? Silence. Right? You could hear a pin drop. 80,000 people who were just cheering and no one knows what just happened. What would have been the defining moment of your career as a player has become the laughingstock for your team. And instead of your team coming and celebrating you, they hang their head in shame wondering what just happened. And instead of you getting a touchdown, you get little yellow flags and men in black and white stripes running in your direction, right? It's a penalty. It's a foul. And this sounds crazy because it would never happen in sports. But I can tell you from working with busy founders and leaders, both in the business world and the nonprofit world, we do it all day, every day as leaders. Yeah. We walk right across the boundary line, and in doing so, we wear ourselves out. It's exhausting sprinting down the sideline, especially when you don't have to. It's frustrating when you end up frustrating your employees, right? It's your star players will leave if you keep doing that. Your captain on the field will be massively undermined if you keep doing that. And so nobody wins in that situation. But you're standing there, it's like, do I really let the ball drop? You know, that's the decision that you're left with. And so as founders, what we have to start to recognize is that when we transition into that 4th stage, we move from being captain on the field to coach on the sideline. It's not about how fast we are anymore. It's not about how big our hands are anymore and how well we throw a ball. It's not even about how well we read a defense or call audibles. It's about how well we call the strategies of the organization and how effectively we position the right people in the right place and train them and hold them accountable. And for founders, that's really hard, especially founders at this stage where all their success has come from doing all those things that we just said they don't need to do anymore. And they sit there on the sideline thinking, it's like Ricky Bobby, like, what do I do with my hands? You know, like, what do I do with myself? You feel put out to pasture. You feel all this risk of like, if they get it wrong, that's my company, that's my baby, that's all my income, right? This is real stuff. And so what happens is what we think was going to be an upgrade to stage 4 leaves us feeling like a disillusioned leader. It leaves us asking the question, is this it? Is this really as good as it gets? Right? We find out that organizations get bigger. They don't really get better. You know, we thought that $1 million was going to be awesome, or we thought that $5 million was going to be amazing. And we get there and, you know, we do $10 million a year. We keep $1 million of profit. What do you find out next? You've got a $400,000 tax bill. Yeah. Right? And everyone's thinking like, what's wrong with you? But it's just like, is this it? I did all of this work for all of these years to be here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a really tough place to be.
It's really interesting. That's a lot. You know, I totally get where you're coming from. I see that that handoff thing is one of the biggest things that I see with folks. I love that analogy. I thought that was absolutely fantastic. So, Scott, let's talk to the audience and just let them know, you know, how you help them win. You know, how you help them really scale the organizations that they run, that they've started. They're babies. You know, I mean, these are like little kids that are, you know, how do you
Well,
help them?
the biggest thing that I want to share, folks, and this is actually the hardest thing to communicate, because when you're down in that stage 4, you're kind of in the belly of the story, right? You're in that hard moment. It's really hard to see how it actually could be different, right? Someone like me comes in and says, "Oh yeah, you can be a CEO, you can do these wonderful, and it can be great." You're like, "Yeah, BS," right? It's just I don't buy it. So what I like to tell folks is, you know, we can get into tips and tactics, and especially in the book, we go into a lot of those. But the biggest thing that you can do at this stage is recognize this is nowhere near as good as it gets. It's nowhere near as good as it gets. If you can grab hold of a vision, however faint it is, that it can get better, what I've found is one of the scariest forces of nature, right, is a founder with a vision. If you can down in the depths of that, find out, hey, no, it can actually be better. I can enjoy leading this organization again. I can find room for my vision again. I can build a team that's going to carry this weight with me again, right? And when you get a vision for that, so many of the other dominoes start to fall into place. But, and here's what I would say to someone who's struggling with that, because it's real. I talk to folks every day who are there. You're not alone. It's kind of like if you ever watch a movie and you get to about 20 minutes before the end, right? Remember Top Gun Maverick came out, and we, you know, my wife and I were going to do date night. So we like move heaven and earth to get a babysitter who can watch all of our wild but wonderful children. And we do dinner and a movie. We're going to watch Top Gun Maverick. And I love it. It's like the throwback to the old. Everything's cool. Tom Cruise is there. I mean, what could go wrong? And if you watch the movie up until about 20 minutes left, it's actually pretty depressing. And what happened is we get a phone call with, again, about 20 minutes left in the movie, an SOS from the babysitter. Like, you got to come. Like, it's time. No one was hurt. Nothing. It was just chaos. And so I missed the last 20 minutes of the movie. Now, if you watch that movie and you really like it, rewind about 20 minutes. Everything that can go wrong has gotten wrong. Like, Tom Cruise has been shot down 3 times. He's having a relational strain. He hasn't got the girl yet. You know, like, just everything that can. Everyone thinks his time is past. It's just, it looks bad for Tom. And so many of us, when we start making decisions in stage 4, we start making decisions like Tom Cruise 20 minutes before the end of Top Gun Maverick, from that place of weakness and despair, quite frankly. Fast forward about a year and a half, I finally get to see the end of Top Gun Maverick. Sorry, I've been saying gear, I think, but Top Gun Maverick, and the triumphant victory, and he gets the girl, and it's, you know, it's the end of the story. And what I would tell anyone out there in stage 4 right now is that this is not the end of the story. In fact, you are one step away. You're one skill set away from the most transformational transition from any one stage to another. The move from that disillusioned leader in stage 4 to the move to become what I call the chief executive, right? This is where you really become CEO for the first time. There is no bigger transformation in any one stage than that. And what you find is that your timeline in that disillusioned leader stage, like, no one can survive that more than a few years, right? It's just, it's hard. Your timeline as CEO, when you really structure that right, can be 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and you love it. You can love working for your business. And if you're sitting there questioning, can I really be a CEO? Do I really have what it takes? If you've got a vision for where your organization can go and you want to learn the skill set, that's the prerequisite. No one has that skill set when they're at stage 4. Everyone who's got it has learned it, and you can learn it too.
I love that. I love that. Fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. That was a good movie too. You've written some books. Tell me about your books. Tell us about your books.
Yeah. So we have 4 books in kind of the official canon, 5 books in the official canon, sorry. 4 of them are by my business partner, Les McEwen. There's one called Predictable Success. I'd start there. It's a great one. There's a couple, Do Lead, Do Scale. And what they're really about is how you build a scalable organization and how you build the team that help you get it there, right? You cannot build a scalable organization by yourself. That is a massive understatement. There's so much gold in each of those books. They're really easy reads. He's a wonderful writer. They're fantastic. I'd highly recommend them. The newest book in our series is the one that I wrote. It's called The Founder's Evolution. And we talk through these stages that we've talked about here. We've mentioned 4 of them so far. There are 7 total, from the dissatisfied employee in the very beginning to what I call a visionary founder in stage 7. And what I did in the book, I intentionally kept it short. It's about half the length of a regular book, because I know that, just getting a founder to read half of a book is enough. I don't need to make them read a full book. So I intentionally kept it short. The other thing that I did is, as we go through these stages, there's a lot in there about why you're in the stage that you're in, what's going on, what caused it, just to help you feel like, hey, you're on a map. You're not alone. And then what I do is I identify there's just 2 or 3, some up to 5 different things that you have to do in that stage to succeed, which means that there's like 20 to 30 things that you're doing right now that you actually don't have to do to succeed anymore. Some of them might need to get handed off. Some of them you just might need to let go. And if you actually take those couple things you need to work on from the book, go after them diligently, you'll save yourself 10. I've seen folks say 15 hours every single week. By just you don't have to run up and down the sideline anymore. You can just call the plays, right? You don't have to be that exhausted. And what that does is, 1, it just gives you some of your life back, let's be honest. But 2, it also creates margin for you to start to dream and grow again. And so the book is designed to do that, to move you right to action as quickly as possible. You can find what stage you're in, you can find the strategies for that stage, and you can implement them as quickly as you'd like.
I love that. Congratulations on your book. That's awesome. That's a great accomplishment. If somebody wanted to get the book, how they get it?
Yeah, we've actually made it 100% free. So anyone who wants to get it, you can download a full copy at scalearchitects.com/founders. Scalearchitects.com/founders. Just enter in your email there. We'll email you a link for it, and you can jump in today.
Awesome. If they want to get in touch with you and kind of further this conversation, what's the best route to do that?
Yep. Right there on that same page, you'll see an opportunity not only to contact me, but to schedule a time for us to chat together. If you say, hey, I'm in it, I don't need to read a book, I know that you can help me out, just get me out of here. I'm happy to help you figure out what stage you're in and give you a clear path to get out as quickly as possible.
Awesome. Scott, thank you so much. This has been great. I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed our time together. Folks, thank you so much for watching another episode or listening to another episode of the Relentless Pursuit of Winning podcast, and we will see you next time.